morning, absolutely awesome afternoon, and fantastic evening. This is Carla from Rehan Allahwala's World of Connections. And today I have the honor of speaking with Tariq Jamil Khan, who I just found out is living in Karachi, has spent a lot of time in the UK, but is basically a Pakistani. And we're going to learn about his life, his work, and his passions in this interview. Having said that, I want to remind you, like I always do, that this interview is sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace one conversation at a time. Tariq, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Carla. My name is Tariq Jamil Khan. I am a father of two living in Karachi, in Pakistan. My wife and my mother live with me, or I live with them. And yeah, I've got two kids. Both of them are in London doing very well with their lives. My daughter's married. My son is not yet. Yeah, so I'm basically a businessman, a trained banker turned into business. And yeah, I've done various businesses primarily in Pakistan. I moved back here. I am a Pakistani by birth. I'm a Karachiite by birth. We moved out of here in 1976. Moved to Germany, first to Frankfurt, then to Hamburg. And subsequently, we then moved in 1980 to England, where we lived for a fair decade or 15 years. And then my family moved back there in 2010, but I stayed here because of business reasons. So since 1992, I've been living in this country, which is my country, and doing different types of things, which we can discuss as we move along.
Okay, why did your family move from Karachi to the UK?
Well, before we moved to the UK, we moved to what was then West Germany. Now it's just Germany. So we lived there for 4 years. My father was in an international bank, so that took him out there. So we went to Frankfurt for a year. He set up the branch for the bank in Frankfurt. I went to an American school. Basically, Frankfurt had a large American army base after the Second World War. Hamburg had a large British army base. When we went to Frankfurt, I went to an American school primarily for military people of the States. Pretty interesting encounter for me, but I'd never really seen many Americans before that. So so 1 year in Frankfurt and then 3 lovely years in Hamburg. Hamburg is a smallish town, and distance-wise, for my father, for us, we went to the Internationale Schule, the international school, and because it was a reasonably well-knitted community, we had good friends. Again, the international school was even more of an amazing experience because we came across a variety of different nationalities who were living in Hamburg at school. And that was a great exposure, I thought. And then also the fact that, Dad would come back. I mean, he'd finish work at 5 or 5:30, and he'd be back home 6, and then we'd have plenty of time together also on the weekends. So the family was very cohesive at that time, and very nice. In 1980, my dad moved to London, so we moved with him. I had my education there. up to an MBA, which I did from the University of Stirling in Scotland. I also qualified as a banker, and I did my first job with a UK-based bank, first with the TSB, then with the Lloyds Bank. Then, unfortunately, towards the end of 1991, my father, who had returned to Karachi and retired, he contracted lung cancer,
Oh.
and that sort of digressed quite rapidly to other parts of his body. So sort of we had to rush back. Myself, my wife, we took him out to North America, to the Middle East for treatment, but it was too late. So he didn't make it beyond December of that year. And then, of course, there was this thing that I had to report back to work. I asked my mother if she'd come back with me. And because she had a great family structure here, her father was alive, her mother-in-law, my grandmother was alive. My grandmother was, living with us at the time. In fact, there were 4 generations living in the same house. Yeah, but she had a great support structure, brothers, sister, wider family, and she didn't fancy going back to London at that stage, being essentially alone with us. So then the choice was for me to call it quits in the UK and resettle here. So that's what happened in December of 1991. And since then, I'm here.
Now, you said you're a businessman, and I know you're trained as a banker. What kind of businesses have you been creating
Well, quite
and working?
sure. Quite a wide variety, actually. So when I came here, my father was running a merchandising company, a buying office, which did inspection on behalf of foreign buyers for for the garment business. So he would be an inspection agency and also a merchandising agency, like placing of orders and executing the orders for different buyers in Europe and the States. So I did that for a few years, which was excellent. Then I thought I'd do something a little bit more substantial. So I set up a stuffed toys factory, which was the first ever stuffed toys factory in Pakistan, in the export processing zone. So we were exporting at that time to Europe. So we would export to Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, the UK. I was also afforded the official license for the Walt Disney, but that was only for the local market. So we got into that business, which was a completely new experience because I'd never done manufacturing. It was a reasonable size. It was just a small factory. I think we were doing about 400 machines, so not a lot. But it was nevertheless a pioneering effort in Pakistan. We had a couple of Koreans come over to train the people here. I can use the word technology, but not the same way as it's used now. Technique, perhaps is a better word. So that lasted for a good decade or so. And then I got an opportunity to work with my uncle in a completely new business, which was compressed natural gas, and sort of using that as a automotive fuel instead of so it's not gas as you guys call it. So instead of petrol or diesel, you would have these little cylinders installed in your car, and you would fill that up with compressed gas at high pressure, and that would kick the car, and it was a very cheap fuel, and Pakistan being essentially a price elastic market, people responded, and again we set up. I think at one stage we had something like 18 CNG stations, so that spread very rapidly. and it's now coming to a close. It's done its cycle. I mean, we've been what 20 years or something like that doing that. So that's coming to a close now because of various reasons like supply issues, and Pakistan has problems in one of its provinces, which or Balochistan, which is traditionally the main supplier of gas. And since, because of law and order, since it's difficult to extract new fields of gas, we're sort of running out of gas and we have to import it now. We're not running out of it, we just can't get it. So, yeah, so, and in between, I had one other thing that I did, which was very good. My father had, when he had come back there, because he'd been a senior banker, he'd set up a couple of um, Islamic banking companies called Mudarbas. And Mudarbas essentially follow the rules of the Sharia from the perspective of, sorry, from the perspective of finance. Um, so he had set two of those up. So when he passed away, his friends were kind enough to ask me to replace him on the board. And of course, I was a little out of place, given that they were all sort of 40 years bankers and like that, and I was like hardly 3 years into banking. But yeah, so I served on that board for about 15 years as well, in between all the other stuff that I told you. And my biggest mistake in life was, from a business perspective, um, whilst we were doing everything else, like whilst the CNG was doing so well, I um, I was lured into some sort of public service in Karachi. We're desperately short of good public transport in this country or in this city, and we have been from the days of my childhood. So the government introduced like a private government partnership sort of a thing, where they encouraged the people who were business people to come up and run buses on public routes. They would set prices and all the rest. So I had a small fleet of about 60 buses running from on I think 3 or 4 different routes in Karachi, and that was an absolute disaster, mainly because I didn't know the business as much as I mean, I did the paperwork. The paperwork sounded great. Feasibility on paper was absolutely fantastic. But uh, the ground realities with with the issues in Karachi at that time, I remember they sort of dug up the roads. They were making flyovers, and so our lead times, instead of doing 45 minutes, same route would then take 2.5 hours. Diesel prices were shooting up. So absolute disaster. And we had to sort of wind that up in like 2.5 or 3 years. So that was one event or one area where I had failed. But just a brief synopsis of what I've done. So it's quite a varied plate, as you can probably imagine, but interesting nevertheless.
What is the most enjoyable thing that you have done in business?
What is the most enjoyable thing that I've done in business?
Yeah. What is the thing that you would want to go back to and work in now?
Oh, I'm Carla. I'm 50. I'm 59 nearly, and I do not want to go back to any area of stress. But the most enjoyable thing, if I sound a bit greedy, is counting cash. So wads of cash is the most important, enjoyable thing I remember. But no, but as an area, I would be happy now in something more of. I mean, at one stage, I've considered just recently to get into the business of service accommodations in London again, because that is something that is new for me, and I think it'll be a new environment, and I like property. I like I have some passion for property, so I wouldn't mind doing that. but I don't want to get into industry again. I certainly don't want to get into transport. Thank you very much. Yes, the CNG business was really good because it was a cash-rich business. So we would pay our bills a month later and get cash on a daily basis. So, you know, that would have been interesting, but I don't think that's going to happen now. So I think, yeah, the idea for me now would probably be something like a service-related industry that I would go into now.
And what kind of service would you want to get?
So, I mean, so something to do with property. I mentioned to you the service accommodation concept. I might do that if things get a little more stable in the UK. The government's messing around at the moment, but I'm sure they'll sort it out in the next few months. Yeah, something like that. Something that's people oriented, where I'm in contact with people rather than with processes, if you like.
Okay. So would you want to go into like a hotel type thing, or
Yeah, I mean, so service accommodation is exactly that. It's like it's in a kind of a hotel, but not quite. You don't get into that level of investment as you would in a hotel, but you might get a block of flats, for example, and you know there are various applications that you can put yourself on, and you know you sort of rent them out on short lets, ranging from one night to 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. And it's like a hotel also because you provide them that service that for clean place of someone changing their beds every day and stuff like that, and of course it's cheaper than a hotel, and people can cook. There's a kitchen in every apartment or in the house, and people can cook and have the freedom to wander around. So yeah, I think it has a good enough market provided you get the right location. So that's one of the areas. There are other areas that I might consider. I'm not completely sure at this stage. I'm taking it reasonably easy as I meander through my options.
and that makes sense because you want to end your life in a manner that's enjoyable.
Right.
Do you see yourself working for the rest of your life in this business, or is it just
Oh,
plug in a few years, or what is
I mean,
the goal?
Carla, as you've probably heard by now, I'm reasonably flexible with my business options. I've been in more than one business. So I don't want to get stuck in anything, and I'm not sure how long the new option might last. It might last 10, 15 years. It might last 5 years. I don't know. But it's something that I want to do now. I want to do something which is which makes me enough money, but it's not too stressful or too big. So something like manufacturing would require serious, a much more serious commitment. I don't really want to get into that. Like I said, I'll be 59 in January. I'd like to work till I'm about 70 or 75. That's not a problem. But I'd like to work around my experience rather than be the dog's body. I don't want to be running around and doing jobs and meeting deadlines. I'd rather have someone else delegated to do that for me now, whilst I just monitor from a distance, if you like.
Now, I don't understand, and only because it runs differently in different countries.
Yes.
Why does the government tell you that you can only do this business or that business? Maybe that's not how you meant it, but that's how I interpreted what
No,
you said.
no. Well, let me explain that. The government doesn't tell you how which business you can or you cannot. That's your personal choice, of course.
Right.
As a businessman, you have to evaluate risk and reward, and then make those decisions. So I don't believe that that I've been ever constrained by any governmental sort of orders, if you like. What happens in this country, in where I am now, where I belong to, in Pakistan, what happens here is that uh, government sort of shifts. So there's not a consistency in policy, and governments don't sometimes don't last their term of office. So it's not like the U.S. where however bad someone might be, they normally continue the 5 years or 4 years or whatever it is. Here, sometimes there's a change of government, and when that happens, that you get a completely new set of policies to confront with. Other times, governments, like everywhere in the world, get a little greedy. So if they pick up a sector and they see a sector is doing really well, um, then they start to tax it and tax it heavily. And that's sort of, from an entrepreneurial perspective, of course, that's not a good thing, because you want to make as much money as possible. So yeah, no. So the government doesn't interfere as to your choice of business, but it sometimes makes a particular line of business a little more difficult than it was before.
And why would you consider going back into banking?
Oh no, I'm too old for that. That kicked me out within a year. I mean, I think pensionable age in the UK is 65. I'm 59, so I don't think I've got much hope there.
But isn't there jobs, a place you with jobs that you would feel more efficient in than with?
No, no, Carla, the banking industry is a little different, because it involves fiduciary responsibilities. People are trained on levels, so you progress. So at my age, at 58, I wouldn't want to be doing reasonably junior jobs, and I don't think they would want. They would probably want someone much younger with perhaps more drive. So no, that just wouldn't be a possibility.
So that isn't something you would consider. Would you go into banking? Or
No, I mean, I just explained to you that would be difficult.
so what do you want to do? What is your dream?
Oh, my dream. Oh, that's a good one. Actually, I'm quite a relaxed person, and my dream is perhaps at some stage to be free enough to travel at will. And traveling isn't something which is fashionable these days after COVID, but and the increase in price of travel. But yeah, I'd like to be able to do that at will. So I'd like to. I read a lot. Perhaps in the background you can see a few books. So I read a reasonable amount, especially history. I'm interested in history. I'm particularly interested in the his history of the subcontinent. So I have an extensive book collection. And yeah, I mean, my wife's. I'd like to spend time with my wife. My wife's a hairstylist, by the way, and a pretty good one. And please don't go with the lack of hair that I possess. That's natural. It's not her fault.
No, that's not her fault at all. In fact, my father was bald. And I asked my mom once about that, and she said, I've never seen dad with hair. And they were married for 62 years. So,
Wow. Oh goodness. Yeah, I started having a receding hairline when I was young, but I wasn't quite bald until I got into my late 30s, early 40s, and then one day I realized that nothing on top. But I never felt insecure about it. By the way, people will advise me over the years to get these transplants. I said, no, 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 thank you, not into that. I'm not going to have people sticking needles in my skull. not interested.
No.
Yeah.
So you have a dream to travel. Where do you want to travel?
Well, one area which I have not explored at all is South America. So that's one area: Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, those sort of places. I've traveled quite extensively, and Africa. That's another area which is missing. So I wouldn't mind traveling to these two regions if you like. I'd love to go to India, but unfortunately, the relations between two countries. I'd love to go to Bangladesh, which used to be part of Pakistan at one time, is now, of course, a sovereign country. But yeah, those two regions, India maybe a bit more of China once things settle down over there. But I've traveled otherwise. I've been to various places, Far East, done Europe extensively, the States, Canada. That's all done in those states, Middle East. But there are, like I think I'd like to do
Are you there? Hello? Are you there? Or did I? Okay, I thought I lost you.
no. I just finished saying what I was saying.
We couldn't hear you.
Oh,
So,
sorry. You want me to say it again?
yeah, I don't know what you said.
Oh, yeah. That's
You
terrible.
you completely went silent.
Oh no, you asked me which particular places would interest me most in terms of travel and
Yeah.
exploration. And I said that I've done most of Europe. I've been to the States many times. I've been to Canada. But I'd like to check out places like, like South America. I haven't been to much of any of South America for that matter. I'd also like to check out the Caribbean, maybe Australia, bit of China, and India. So quite a lot of boxes to tick still.
And although there's that much for you to explore, are there places that you want to explore more than other places? Like, would you rather go to India or would you rather go to South America? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I lost you there, Carla. I didn't. I mean, I'm not taking revenge, but I didn't hear a word of that.
I have a feeling your internet is kind of dying, so we're going to try to get this done.
Yeah.
Are there places that you want to visit more than any other places? Like you said, I'd like to go to India, but it doesn't look possible right now. You talked
Yeah.
about South America. What is more your state of wanting to go?
Sorry, what is more of what?
What
Where
is
do you think it's more
more
possible?
what is your more preferred places to go visit?
Yeah, so the two main spots. I mean, preferred. I'd love to go to India and check out. My parents belong originally to India, or what was British India, but which is now in what is in India now. So I wouldn't mind seeing the place of my ancestors. Perhaps check out a few graves and that sort of stuff. But the two other regions that I'd really like to visit would be South America and Africa.
And what is it about South America that kind of draws you in that direction?
Okay, so mainly South America, I would suggest the fact that I have very little exposure to the place and the people. So I'd like to learn about the people, the cultures, um, go to the fair at Rio, because that's world famous. But yeah, mainly the people. I don't know the people in Brazil or Argentina. I don't know the culture. I don't know the way they think. So I'd like to meet up with a few whilst I'm there. Uh, Africa is slightly different. Africa interests me because of nature, and because it's so vast, and because I think it's still uh, there's much to explore in that region. So and it's coming up quite nicely actually. Yeah, I'd like to go to Africa more for the place than the people, and I'd like to go to South America more for the people and the culture than anything else.
Wow. Is there anything you want our audience in particular to keep in mind about you?
No, I'm a pretty easygoing person. There's not much really to keep in mind. I'm a very proud parent, by the way. I have two excellent children, both of them excelling in their line of work and also as human beings. Um, More and more of my focus is towards them now, and I'm looking forward to be a grandparent at some stage. So that's one other goal that I need to achieve, but it's not in my control, unfortunately.
No, that's definitely not in your control. What do your kids do?
Okay, now I'm saying all of this without their permission, but given the fact that I'm their parent, perhaps they'll get away with it. So my daughter is a trained solicitor in the UK, but she's sort of switched um, her area of work a little bit, and she's now working for a tech company, um, setting up this sort of a specialized job, which I don't really understand. It's to do with technology and with selling art to rich people and stuff like that. So out of my league, unfortunately, but she's doing it rather well in it. And similarly, my son, he's doing even better. He works for a company which is essentially bringing together fund managers and investors, and he deploys. He connects the two, so both of them that can make money. And meanwhile, he tries to make some money for himself. He's only 28, but he's brilliant at work, and he's also London-based. He tries to, his portfolio brings him over to the Middle East as well, although his main focus is Europe.
Are they
So
both married?
say that again?
Are they both married at this
No,
point?
no, my daughter is married, but my son is not yet.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And maybe I can tell you a little bit about my mother. My mother is a very gentle person. She's, like I said, she was born in what is India now. And we used to be British India at the time. And my grandparents migrated to this part of the world in 1948. My mother is essentially a housewife, but she's been responsible for bringing us all up. And she's been very brave. She was a young widow when my father passed away quite young in 1991. And um, she's done a good job of keeping the family together. She's quite an easygoing person, flexible, and coexisting in a joint family is not an easy job. She's been brilliant at it. She gets along well with my wife. My wife gets along very well with her. So, it's a nice, happy family.
Does your
Yeah.
wife work at all?
Yes, she does. My wife's a trained hairstylist. She worked, again, she used to have a clothes boutique and also a hair salon in Karachi. And then she moved with the kids to London in 2010, and she worked for a large hairstyling chain in London. She did very well over there as well. She's back here now, and she's tried out a couple of projects, and she's actually more driven to business right now than I am, surprisingly. But then she is a few years younger to me, so that's hardly surprising.
Well, that sounds very nice. Was it an arranged marriage? I'm just curious.
No, no. Well, yeah, actually, it was. So it was arranged to the extent that we were lined up, we were introduced, and then we spent some time together just trying to get to know each other. And at that time, Carla, we were, as when I was like 24 or 25, and Afshin was, I think, 20. And I think we were pretty uncomplicated as people. I look at my kids now, and they make these huge decisions about marriage, and so much thought process is going into it. I for one, never actually gave it much thought beyond the fact that I got along with my wife. So yeah, it was arranged, correct?
I personally, I don't understand the arranged marriage, but that's in a totally different topic.
So like I said, Carla, it wasn't arranged. I mean, there's various forms of arranged marriages. I've heard of people
Yeah.
getting married on the telephone, and I've heard of people not meeting and getting married. So it wasn't like that. So we were introduced, and then we spent like a few months um, just getting to know each other, meeting each other again and again, and that's it. So it was a sort of a quasi-arranged marriage. Let's put it like that.
But it's still good.
Yes, so far, yes.
How many years? 30 some years? I mean,
Yes, 32 years.
wow.
32 Yes.
I want to thank you for talking to me, and it was a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Carla, for having me on your show, on your program, for the interview. It was good to be here. Nice and relaxed. I don't know if I made much sense, but but it was a good experience, and thank you very much.
You were fine, no concerns. And
Okay,
with
cheers.
that, I think we're going to close the show. I want to remind everyone that this show was sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace, one conversation at a time. And can we wave goodbye? Bye,
Cheers. Thank you.
folks.
Bye bye. Cheers.
See you later.
Bye bye.